IVM.
When you go to a restaurant, what are you really looking for? Behavioral economics tells us that our ability to pay for food goes higher when food becomes an experience. But how do you build a food brand around an experience without being gimmicky, without adding unnecessary fluffy stuff? And then, once you've built this experience, how do you expand an experience-based brand? How do you take this idea to something like delivery and direct to home, especially in the context of the pandemic, where direct to home brands and home delivery has gained such prominence? If there's one category that the pandemic has affected the most, it is the restaurant business. While we have all missed hanging around with family and friends at our favorite restaurants, the restaurants themselves have been busy pivoting. They've been busy learning terms such as API and D2C, as our guest today on the show puts it. Welcome to Speakeasy with Dheeraj Sinha, and today I'm talking to Sameer Seth, founder and CEO of Hungering, the group that owns Bombay Canteen, O Pedro, and the Bombay Sweet Shop. I have in fact a vested interest in calling Sameer to my podcast. You know, it's a long-standing advertising dream to start your own restaurant in Goa. So I thought this time around I'll actually get someone who runs a restaurant business to figure out if this dream is actually worth hanging on to. Sameer, welcome to Speakeasy with Dheeraj Sinha. Hi Sameer, good to have you on board.
Thanks so much for having me, Dheeraj.
Excellent. So Sameer, today morning I was remembering how we met. You may not remember because so many guests walk in through the door. This was the peak of Bombay Canteen. Right. And I wasn't getting reservations. So I was calling one after the other and saying, and I was being turned down. And I was convinced that this was fake. I mean, nobody can get this kind of traction. Right. And then we have a common friend, Sandy. And after one of the advertising do's, Sandy was walking into Bombay Canteen and he said, I'm going there. Why don't you come with me? I said, tell your friend that, I'm not been getting reservation and can't be real. So he said, why don't you come and tell Sameer the same thing yourself? And then Sandy and we walked in and we met you. And that was also a time that I just launched my book.
I remember that so well. And I think actually this always happens to me. I remember where conversations happen in the restaurant. So I remember we were standing in that corner near the bar and having this conversation. And you told me the exact same story at that point. And I was like, next time you definitely should just give me a call and we'll try to help you out as soon as possible. And it's been great knowing you ever since.
Yeah, and such amazing success, Sameer, right? I mean, Bombay Canteen definitely is, it's a story by itself now. But what I like about you and your team, what you keep doing is that you don't sit on your laurels, right? And you keep moving on and you keep creating. And that's why we have so much heart for what you and your team do. And we'll come to a lot of that. Yeah, we'll come to a lot of that as we go along. But I wanted to start a conversation we've never had. And I figured that you've been a finance guy, right? And from finance to restaurant. And there's a specific context to this, right? Because, in advertising, we joke that our stomachs are the biggest organs. So every advertising dream is actually that, oh, you know what, I want to go to Goa or Paris or Greece or wherever and start a restaurant. Right. 90% of advertising retirement dreams are starting a restaurant. Right? So I wanted to ask you, how did you get from finance to restaurant, A, and B, would you much rather be in the world of finance now, knowing how tough it is running restaurants?
I think that thought might have occurred a few years ago, but it no longer occurs only because that I don't think any of the other places are as easy. Each one of them has their own issues, and this is the world I've fallen in love with and very much want to stay in for a long, long time to come, hopefully. I think going back to what sort of made me move from finance to restaurants was, I think it was always this, as they call it, a kida in my brain that wanted to do something around food, but obviously had a fairly sort of good set of advice through my teens and early 20s to say, no, go to college, then go do an MBA, then go get a good job. Citibank was, and actually Citibank turned out to be a great sort of training ground as a 22-year-old, right? Like, because funnily enough, I always think back and see that the lessons one kind of learned even at that stage. I was a credit analyst for their mortgage division. And funnily enough, many years later, my life still revolves around real estate and analyzing it and looking at it. Nowhere else as a 22-year-old, you would have been taught the idiosyncrasies of reading legal documents here in India and looking at real estate from a finance point of view and things like that. So it became unknowingly a great sort of training ground. But I still remember, like, the story that always stays in my head when I was trying to make the move was my grandmom looking at me and saying कि तुम बैंक छोड़ के पराठे बेचने जा रहे हो. And I think it seemed that notion of romance of around working in restaurants was shattered pretty quickly, like, because the restaurant company I joined, and that's where I actually met Sandy as well. We were opening 3 restaurants in the first 6 months of me joining, and it was literally sort of a roller coaster and then some. And I think could not have asked for a better experience in terms of just like diving into the deep end and being shown everything that can go right and everything that can go wrong in the first couple of years. But like I was saying earlier, I just fell in love with this entire world so much that I don't think I can be doing anything else. And I think today, like, one is able to use the world of restaurants to really sort of explore all other interests that comes one way, right? Like the restaurant world has almost become a canvas for all of us to pursue our dreams in whatever way it sort of presents itself. And even from, I think, from having started in this business in 2007 to now looking back at that journey in 2021, one is a completely different person. And that is because of being able to sort of use restaurants as a way of sort of expressing oneself, as well as having a great set of people to do this with through this period has been really the factor that I will definitely attribute to staying in love with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. You're right. I think no matter how tough it is, I mean, if it's our passion, then we stay and stay. I mean, I can tell you running an agency isn't an easy job, and there isn't a morning I wake up and say, oh my God, what am I doing? But at the same time, I wouldn't give this up for anything else. Because I get exactly what you're saying. So Sameer, we've discussed this many times, and you and I have discussed about food and India and so on and so forth. So I want to pick your brains on that. I want to understand what have your learnings been around food, and we keep doing a lot of work around food. And I was analyzing, for example, delivery. With Swiggy's and Zomato, and between, say, biryani and paneer and Chinese, right, which is Indian Chinese, I think 90-95% of all home delivery gets explained in India, right? I mean, some bit of experiment here and there. And then there are those stories of, Indians going abroad and taking ready pack with themselves and stopping the water in the wash basin and heating it and eating it and all of. So there's enough stories about how to an Indian, the native palate, the local palate, right? As one of my clients used to say that, Indian ko jab tak mirchi nahi lagta hai, tab tak swad nahi aata hai. Right? So, Indian palate has notoriously been around the core, the native, the traditional, right? Even if you look at all the changes have happened around the periphery, around the snack. And we've been also notorious to take international ideas and Indianize them to the extent of them not being able to differentiate themselves at all. So what has your learning been on food, palate, behavior through your times as you started building Bombay Canteen and then moving on to O Pedro and Bombay Sweet Shop? So take us through the learnings around food, what works, what doesn't work, and the whole thinking there.
Yeah, sure. I think when I started in this business, I think it was more about like just understanding the business of restaurants, so to speak. And I think it took me leaving India to truly understand that why people will always come back to restaurants is not because of that ambience, not because of the music you play, not because of the scene you create, but because of the food. I think food is so deeply emotional at every level that unless and until you don't focus on the food, nothing's going to happen. And I think I still remember the first time that sort of realization started coming in was I was in my first job in New York, like right after Delhi. I moved to the US, studied at Cornell's hotel school, where Yash, who's my co-founder now, was my classmate. And we started having, as the good two desis following the F&B track, we were like, kabhi jaake wapas restaurant kholenge. That conversation started there, but he went off to Singapore at that time, Chicago, and then Singapore. I went off to New York. And I remember standing, it was a French restaurant that I started working in New York City. And the first 3 months was just spent, every afternoon you spend half an hour to 45 minutes eating the food, drinking the wine. Well, by drinking, I mean tasting. And having conversations about like what is it and how is it that you can sort of take people through a journey on that, through that food and drink, right? It wasn't about here is a menu and here we are supposed to just be able to take the order and give it to you. It was so much more than that. And I think that was, it took me by surprise, because like it almost became like this continued education versus just doing another job. As life would have it, like that job didn't last well, because I think there's so much to be said about the culture of the places you work in. But I think I was fortunate enough to have Chef Floyd as my boss right after that. And that was one of my main reasons for moving, because I was supposed to get that job right after graduating. That project got delayed, etc., etc. But I was lucky that 7-8 months later, our paths crossed again and we were able to reconnect. And that happened. And we helped open a restaurant there called North End Grill, which was part of the Union Square Hospitality Group there. And truly, it was Floyd who completely was my first teacher to teach me about food in a way that I'd never experienced before, right? I think it was so much about balance. It was so much about flavor. It was so much about where your food is coming from. All those sort of notions which we now so ingrained in everything that we do at Hunger Inc., I think started by learning from him. And I think how we went about thinking about Bombay Canteen was really, Yash and I we started talking back in 2012 about what kind of restaurant we want to open. And at that point, everything, if you look back at 2012, you either went to a restaurant which served Asian cuisine or continental food if you wanted to go out. Indian food was eaten at home or some version of Moti Mahal in your city, and you knew your order before you even walked in. You're going to have like butter chicken, naan, dal makhni, some version of paneer if you were vegetarian. And that was it, right? Like and I think now looking back, you realize that growing up, that's not what you ate. You ate seasonally, you ate what was very, very regional in your part of the country. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Bangalore, Calcutta, Delhi, and travel around because my dad was in a job which had that as part of it. And you ate very differently in different parts of the country. It had not become homogenized to the point where Indian restaurant meant dal makhni butter chicken, and otherwise you went to an Udupi restaurant where it was South Indian food, and everything in between was just relegated to being eaten at home and was considered to be boring. And I think it was being in New York and being in Singapore for Yash, like we started having this conversation about what was happening in those two cities. And what was starting to happen there, not starting to happen, it was definitely pretty much prevalent at that point, was people were taking what was nostalgia around food, memories around food, and contemporizing them and making them relevant for today's generation, so to speak. And nothing like that was happening back in 2012 for Indian food. And the answer to us was obvious, that we formed the sort of ABC of this idea and then took it to Floyd, because we knew we couldn't ever cook the food. And it was just serendipity at that point that Floyd also was in the mood to do something in India, and he and I had worked for about a year at that point. And the three of us came together at that moment, saying that we want to take a restaurant or create a restaurant back in India which hopefully celebrates Indian food in a way that it's meant to be. And that was our first sort of steps towards that understanding of what would work in India. I think at the end of the day, we opened with a certain point of view back in 2015. And it was at that point, Floyd was helping create the vestiges of the menu, and Thomas had joined our team over here, and he was sort of executing it. And all four of us were from four different parts of the country, and those memories of those four different parts of the country became the opening menu, so to speak.
Amazing.
And we made it. While it was off to a roaring success, and we were very, very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time, I feel there's always a little bit of that happens. I think we also made a fair share of mistakes. One of the things was all of us have what I always call a non-vegetarian mindset, where our mind goes to what we like to eat, and which is non-vegetarian food. And I think in the first 6 months, we got a lot of critical feedback around our vegetarian food. And we realized very quickly that it was every vegetarian dish on the menu was an offshoot of a non-vegetarian idea. And we were like, we need to stop doing it. I remember summer was coming in, all four of us went to the market, see what's in season, see what's happening. And it was a good process of 6-8 months before we were able to get that excitement going on the vegetarian side of the menu as well. And I think to the point you were making earlier was that there are so many sort of these stories of how we all behave when we go abroad, and that jab tak wo mirch nahi lagti, wo khane ka swad nahi aata. It is so true, right? Like, I think what we've realized is this, so like flavor is so important to us growing up. Like, we are so used to having peak flavor all the time.
Yes.
Given that we use so many spices, given the liberal use of souring agents in the country, liberal use
also very multi-textural, right?
Very multi-textural.
Dal, rice, pickle, textures, and they all
it's why chaat is it's why chaat is you go to any part of India, absolutely. Like chaat will be number one. It hits all the notes. It hits all the notes so well. And I think that process has been a super interesting one, and it's taken us down different rabbit holes, so to speak. We went, when 2017, when we opened O Pedro, we realized Goa, because of its Portuguese connection, had a completely different style of cooking. And obviously Floyd was Goan, so we knew a lot about it going in. But traveling to Portugal, seeing how some of these stories came to India, the Portuguese connection is so deep-rooted. Everyone knows the chili story, and we wouldn't have had bread, we wouldn't have had paneer, we wouldn't have had tomatoes in India, like potentially without the Portuguese sort of coming here. So I think throughout this process, it's been like going deeper and deeper into the layers of what cuisine in India can be. And I think the way we like to think of our menus now has been that it's about, we look at it from a form and flavor perspective. And going back to that notion of food as being an emotion, I think if you take the form and the flavor too far away from what people know, you get left with something which does not connect. At the end of the day, I remember this one dish which we were super proud of when we were opening. It was this spaghetti dish with a prawn rasam. And to us, in our minds, it mimicked like the flavor of Maggi, because that's what we convinced ourselves it reminded us of. But put in front of another person, they didn't form the connection at all. They were like, what is this? And I think throughout that process, it's been learning how do you create dishes through iteration which connect with people. And I think that is so important. And I think we've always sort of tried to create dishes which have that flavor and that stay true to tradition, but then have our version of it available so that there is a story you're telling in our own words versus just saying that this is what has been happening for hundreds of years and here it is again in front of you.
Yeah. So I mean, I love the idea that you talk about that food is emotion, and almost it's like rekindling memories, and through food, living multiple versions of ourselves, of our lives that we've lived. You know, it's like music kind of has a real estate in your mind, reminds you of some memories, reminds you of some things which have happened. Similarly, food, right? It is nostalgia. It's a memory structure in your mind, and you consume that.
Right.
I like this flow, so I'll stay with this flow a bit, Samir. And I want to also understand, see, typically in business or in brand management, you're taught that, okay, you've got a product, you've got a brand. Now keep extending, right? So you've got a Bombay canteen and 15 Bombay canteens, and there can be Bombay canteen heavy, there can be Bombay canteen light, and so on and so forth. Bombay canteen north, south. But you've not gone that path. You've gone and done an O Pedro. You've gone and done Bombay Sweet Shop. How are you looking at portfolio? What is the principle around which you guys are thinking expansion? How do you think expansion? And would these brands travel and in what formats?
Sure. I think for us, I think this was largely driven by our collective experiences in the restaurant world between all of us. Like we'd all worked with other companies at that point and
Yeah.
seen the pros and cons of expanding, right? Like I had seen it very early on. The same company I opened 3 restaurants with, we spent the next couple of years shutting 7 restaurants
Yeah.
as well. Because I think the notion is that if you've got a good idea, now let's go 1 to 4 to 10 to whatever, and that's how you grow. But I think the idiosyncrasies of India in particular are harsh. As a business, we are very, very real estate dependent, which is, and real estate pockets and development is depending on which sort of niche you are catering to, which segment you are in, where I think QSRs have different model altogether versus restaurants such as ours, where it is very real estate heavy at both. Bombay Canteen is about 4,000 square feet. O Pedro is about 2,700 square feet. These are not small restaurants and not cheap to build at all. And that being one factor, coupled with the fact that going to Delhi versus Bangalore versus Bombay is like going to 3 different countries. Palates change. The whole thought process changes in terms of how pricing is considered. I feel eating behavior changes completely depending on which part of the country you're in. So suddenly you're faced with sort of externalities which don't make scaling easy at all. You're almost setting up from scratch in different cities and different. And I don't think I can just go from, say, Lower Parel to BKC with the same restaurant and say, now I have expanded. You're going to eventually cannibalize on this piece because people are coming to you for a unique experience. You have to understand your reason for being in the business, right? Like if people are coming for a unique experience, just because you're making it more convenient to have the experience near their home doesn't mean that it's going to do well all over again. So I think that these have been sort of the foundational thoughts which have driven our version of expanding. I think we are all extremely ambitious as a team and wanted to expand, but we said, if what's driving us is the thought and what we're passionate about is taking traditions of India and celebrating them in a different way, why not look at the format changing completely? And this was sort of that led to a thought with Yash back in 2016. I remember he was traveling through to New York to help Floyd. Floyd was opening Pawwala at that time, and he was traveling through Paris airport on one trip and through Istanbul airport at one trip. And in both duty frees, there are these very sort of seminal food products that are there that speak of the country, which are very easy to pick up. You suddenly have a gift in your hand. You suddenly feel you are taking a piece of that country with you home. But when he started thinking about like what does that mean for India, it typically meant like a box of spices or chai. If you wanted to think of alcohol, you took Old Monk, which to us is great, but if you give it to someone else, they'll be. It's basically lighter fluid at some level. So I'll still drink it on a cold, rainy day like today. I would still love an Old Monk and Coke, but I don't think that's a memory that'll be universal. And I think that's kind of what triggered the thought that if we want to do something that celebrates India, can it take the form of a product? And we went through a lot of iteration in terms of thinking, in terms of what kind of products would we like to take. And we finally settled on the world of sweets because we felt like this was like Indian food as a whole. The world of sweets had never been looked at from a storytelling perspective where you start delving into it from every angle. And I think, again, one of the learnings, going back to your previous question, is like travel has been a huge part of what has driven us to understand what food in India can be, because our food is not documented. You have to talk to people, you have to experience it yourself to understand it. And that kind of started the journey where we started delving into the world of mithai. We were very fortunate at that time. Girish, who now heads Bombay Sweet Shops, Kitchens, was also sort of thinking along the same lines, and it was meeting of minds at the same time. And we spent almost 2 years traveling the length and breadth of India, sort of working with halwais, going to various cities, understanding technique, understanding flavor, understanding the thought process behind which some of this stuff is made. And Floyd would always say this, unless you don't take the time to understand tradition, you can't have your own point of view on it. And I think we took that very, very seriously when it came to Bombay Sweet Shop, because we felt like if this was to go into people's homes, you won't have the same, like you walk into a restaurant, I can explain to you a thought process.
Yeah.
Here you have to take the time to figure out how that thought process will travel almost through packaging, through the product, through various other touch points, etc. And Bombay Sweet Shop's become our first sort of, hopefully our first foray into the world of food products, where we feel that I think you can transport that magic of food being an emotion to people's homes. And mithai as a category anyways always enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Of course, it's enjoyed in the shop as well. And I think all of that came together quite beautifully as a thought process for us to be able to take this step.
Yeah.
So I think as we're thinking about, to your question earlier, like how are we thinking about planning, I think restaurants will always be our love, first love.
Yeah.
But as we look at growing, I think it's going to be a combination of those restaurants as well as how do you take the flavors that we are creating into people's homes. Like the last year has been a watershed moment in more ways than one. And one of the things is that we've also had to realize as a business that we can't have all our proverbial eggs in the dine-in restaurant basket.
Yes.
That has meant looking at things like delivery from a very different lens. It's not just the restaurant food that needs to go. It needs to have its own legs where that it's solving the purpose of what people want to eat at home. Similarly, with food products, like Bombay Sweet Shop is one category. We've also experimented. O Pedro has what we call the O Pedro Deli, where we've got butters and breads and hot sauces, etc., which we're experimenting with. These are all nascent ideas right now.
Yeah.
But the whole thought process is amongst these three channels, so to speak, you are able to then create the right kind of products that can go into each channel. Like one of my favorite experiments from last year has been to create a gin in collaboration with our friends at Strangers and Sons.
Yeah, I know.
Perry Road, Peru, which
I got my hand on that and it was awesome.
Yeah, so and I
still waiting for the next round. Yeah.
Hopefully soon. Hopefully once guavas are back in season.
Yeah. No, but what I also loved was that you sent a small pack with it, with the spices. I mean, so I get the point that you're making, that it's not just about food as a need, it's about experience. I mean, and delivering that experience is critical to the core of what you're doing.
Right. No, completely. Yeah. And I think there are many, many ways to do that. And I think we're just scratching the surface as far as doing it. I think as a organization, we're realizing as we are moving away from just being an operator of restaurants to also doing food products which are going directly to consumer, living digitally, being on delivery platforms, etc., etc. It's a different skill set that we also need to start building now as an organization. And it's been a fairly challenging time, but also it's been a very reflective time in terms of being able to think through what will it take to succeed now in this space. I think our skill sets developed till 2013, which brought us to the same idea and the table, were very, very focused on running a great restaurant. That skill set almost needs to evolve now, and we need to grow our family and our village in a way that we are able to then have the right and the ability to play in the digital world as well. And that is going to look very, very different from... It's going to be, I feel, a combination of the offline and the online world. Hopefully, once lockdowns are behind us, etc. I don't think you are going to go away from people wanting to enjoy restaurants, enjoy experiences. But how do you even translate them digitally is going to become a really important part for us to solve. And we are super excited to be able to solve that.
Yeah. So this is going great. Sameer, we'll take a quick break and come back and talk a little bit more about the change that you are pointing to in terms of the watershed moment, what pandemic has brought upon all of us, and how we need to all change. So we'll come back and discuss a lot more about that. So into a quick break.
If you love cricket, listen up. The Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast is here for you. Hosted by DJ, Varun, and me, Ashwin, we bring a fun, fresh fan's point of view to talking all things cricket. Sometimes it's just the three of us, sometimes we have guests, including current and former international cricketers. For new episodes every week, check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast on the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back, Sameer, to the conversation. It's a great time. I'm having a great time having a chat with you.
Same here.
Yeah. So switching gears a bit, and something that you started talking about, Samir, before we went into the break, right? I mean, obviously pandemic has accelerated digital, right? Some categories have been affected more, some less. Definitely dine out, hospitality, travel are categories which are impacted in a huge way. There will obviously also be a revenge comeback, right? My friends in the US are sending me screen grabs of how Miami to San Francisco is $1,500 a ticket and so on and so forth. So that's going to happen as well. But I agree with you that things are changing fundamentally forever in a big way, right? I also want to pick up the point that the whole idea of delivery of food at home, right? Brands, platforms, they've all been built around efficiency, right?
Right.
It's all about how fast can I deliver, how quickly can I deliver, from how many places can I deliver, how many things. It's all about logistics. It's all about efficiency. It's about time, right? And I often feel that it has taken the whole juice and joy away from the idea of food, which is about enjoyment, memories, experiences, right? So the delivery ecosystem is absolutely opposite of the food courts, if you're to like. And your fundamental premise and promise being around experiences and memories and rekindling traditions in interesting way. So how are you looking at navigating the world of digital, the world of delivery in the new space? That's something I want to explore with you.
I think it's been, I think just the way I think we started scratching the surface of the world of food about 8, 10 years ago, I think we're scratching the surface as far as what it means to be an F&B company in this digital age. And the last year, as I was mentioning earlier, has been a time for us to experiment a lot and learn a lot through this. In the first lockdown, when it started last March, we had just launched it. Bombay Sweet Shop launched 15 days before that lockdown. And that original thought process was that our core strength lay in creating experiences in a retail format, in an offline format. And what we created was a production center for Bombay Sweet Shop, but we took a leaf out of chocolate brands and wine brands from all over the world, where at the home of the brand, you are also able to touch and feel and experience it. And so what we created was if Willy Wonka had a mithai factory, what would it look like? And it was amazing to do that, but we never got a chance to even use it in the way we had imagined it, because very soon we had to learn all the acronyms from D2C to APIs to whatever not, to make sure that people were getting what we were creating at home. And I think that first level has always been about convenience, right? I think when you start off, it is about getting the product to people in the way they want it. And I think what has ended up happening in the last 4-5 years is, with the advent of Amazons and the Flipkarts, etc., and obviously Swiggy's and Zomato's, there's what has become almost hygiene needs for guests today. Like even from a brand like ours, on-demand tracking of where their delivery is at the precise location, GPS tracking has become a need. Which is hygiene now. It's not like a feature which is added on, which is wowing guests. And I think as we were going through that process, as we were creating more and more traction in the last few months, it reached a point where at peak Diwali, we were dealing with thousands of orders a day. And Yash and I and the whole team, we were out doing deliveries ourselves because we couldn't keep up, fortunately, with the demand.
Wow.
But we realized that if we keep going down the path of convenience only, we are just going to become one of many. I think it really sort of triggered a conversation amongst us saying that, what do we need to continue doing, which will take that same ethos of what has been hungering for the last 5 odd years and continue that in the digital space as well. And I think that's where the notion of trust and relationships takes over, where it's not just about efficiency, but it's also about building that relationship. And we find ourselves at the crossroads where, as an industry, hospitality has focused very much of controlling that relationship within its 4 walls. But when it came to the digital world, we were very happy to sort of trade away the convenience of having someone else take care of this and not doing it ourselves. And I think the last year has taught us that can no longer be an option. You have to have, while the aggregators and the platforms will be important, and there will be a channel where people, it's like saying, if you are going to be available in your own store versus at a department store, right, as a product. I think it's the same question that we have. We need to have our own digital presence. We need to have our own relationship. We need to have that engagement and that conversation and dialogue going with our guests to remain relevant in the long run. Otherwise, you're just going to become commoditized eventually.
Yeah.
Because if the data is flowing into, and there are enough and more examples of this, right? Like platforms reading the data and white labeling the product and selling it much better than you ever can, because they have the data to work with it. So it's been, and we are just starting that journey, I feel. We are making our first steps towards thinking digitally, where how do we create a more trusted environment? How do we create a more effortless environment? How do we create a more personalized environment for that guest experience to happen digitally, so that people are able to come to us and really, really create memories, not just through the product, but hopefully through that journey as well, which they take to us from discovery to fulfillment. And I think, have we solved it? Not at all.
Right.
But to give you an instance, one thing that became very, very important to us, medium for us, was WhatsApp. And this example kind of speaks to both sides, right? Like us trying to create a new channel for that conversation is pointless, because the customers and the guests are telling us that they want to talk on WhatsApp. So it's the onus is on us then to figure out how do we use that channel. But what we also realized was a lot of time was being wasted for our team members dealing with just normal queries. Where's my delivery? What is the menu like today? Just basic hygiene questions. So over the last couple of months, and Yash has been leading this project, where along with another company that works very closely with WhatsApp, we've developed a bot, and the bot's name is Bundi, for Bombay Sweet Shop. And the aim of this is to sort of automate everything which is hygiene and will not add to the experience in any significant way. But what it does is two things. That convenience is, as I was saying earlier, required now. But what it's also doing is it's freeing up time for our team members to be able to have the deeper conversations and for the more complex queries where service is required. And I think the combination of we launched it a month ago. It's still a learning process for us, etc. But already, like, we are seeing engagement levels go up. Hopefully, more and more people will start conversing with us and transacting with us on WhatsApp. And through that process, what I think our thought process now is going to be that, how do I make it easier to reach someone on our team through technology rather than making it harder? Like, so often we've had like frustrating experiences on call center phone numbers where you try every button. Like we all tend to like press 0, press 9. Hopefully somewhere you'll end up with a person who will solve your problem.
Is it designed not to get you to a human interface?
Exactly. So the process of design should be, how does it become easier to have that conversation so that we can build that relationship, so that we can hopefully create that memory. And that, if that is the underlying principle with which we are working, what is the kind of technology we need to be using that will enable what we do best versus trying to replace what we do best. And I think that really is sort of what we are trying to do now over the next many months. And hopefully when you and I talk in a few months, I'll have more to share on this front. But right now we are super excited about this. And again, building a team, hopefully, that can execute on this thought process.
So that's awesome, right? I mean, I remember one of the big parts of, say, walking into Bombay Canteen were all the people wearing those t-shirts called Bro. Right. And that chit chat, somebody will come, even if you're sitting alone, they'll chat with you, recommend something, add something to your order. I mean, that was a large part of the experience, right? And it's tough, but if you can replicate any bits of that personalization, that warmth through technology, then again, you are going back to the idea of delivering experience and not just food, which is in some ways commodity.
Exactly. And I think that it's that warmth and that almost that sense of community that we all go back to things related to food, right? Like how many, like I remember growing up, each meal was spent planning the next meal as a family.
Yes,
And
of course.
that became like almost like the seed in my life, which has led me down this path of wanting to work in the world of food, right? And I think so many of our memories are created with food around the table, and that's exactly what we need to be doing. But we just need to be doing it now, knowing that that interaction is happening on the phone, on the computer, on a chat, everywhere and anywhere. And we, as an industry, we need to adapt to that versus saying that no, that's not us.
Yeah. No, I was having a chat with DM who runs retail for Reliance. And one of the things he said is very interesting. He's saying that, technology has to mimic the intuitiveness of life. So if the Indian consumer is used to writing the list on a pad and WhatsApping it to the neighborhood retailer who delivers it, so be it. You have to figure your technology to deliver that.
Completely.
Right? You cannot expect people to come and adopt to your technology. And that's a very interesting learning. Samir, I also want to, last time when we were chatting up, you spoke about how during the pandemic, because food is the only new thing you said happening in the house, right? Everything's familiar. And you're so right, because it's been almost a year looking at the same walls, same lamp, right? Same
Completely.
people many times through Team and Zoom, right? And within the boundaries of the house, not much new is happening, and your insight of saying that food is the entertainment now, food is the new, and we were discussing the Chinese menu, and then you say, oh wow, that's last week, now we have Thai. So talk to us a bit more about this change. What are the patterns when it comes to consumption of food that you are seeing, and are they different post-pandemic?
I think it's different, but what I'll also caveat what I'm saying next is also our thought process was applied to our category, which was at a sort of higher average ticket size.
Right.
And again, the expectation that Bombay Canteen delivers an experience.
Yes.
So it was an application to that thought process. In the first lockdown, we realized that we were, as I was mentioning earlier to you, we were basically delivering what was restaurant food only and putting it in boxes and sending it to people's homes. And realized that while it was great in the first lockdown, I think people's tastes have also evolved a year later. We are looking for that. While you could no longer go out for movies, you couldn't go out and meet friends, one thing you could do was order food in and have that moment with your family and your loved ones at home. But you were also then craving something new. So this time I remember when in March, end of March, Bombay went into lockdown. It happened on a Sunday, and on a Monday morning we met as a team and we said, what will we do this time around? And we really wanted to sort of treat this lockdown on our own terms, because I feel the one thing we love to do as a team is to create. And I think if we continue to do that, it would really help us sort of have that sense of ownership through this piece where, again, we were going back. Otherwise, negativity and despair has been all around us for the last few months.
Yeah.
Literally, I think, whiteboarded, I would say 5 to 8 ideas. I remember we zeroed down where we would succeed the most. One was King Fu Canteen, which was the Indian Chinese concept. And then there was what became Brun and Babka, which was an online bake shop. And within 3.5 days, we were able to create both, and we were ready to take orders. From testing to branding to packaging to all of those things. Because again, I think this is a testament to some of the most amazing people that I've had the pleasure of working with, to rally together to make this happen. And I think the one thing this pandemic taught us that having that agility to move quickly is really, really important. Because, and as data showed us that people were okay with King Fu Canteen, and 6 to 8 weeks in, we said, let's give them something new in the form of Thai food now. Similarly, our learning has been that what people really want is comfort at home and not the most fine dining version of something. So how do you create things from around the world? So at O Pedro, we've created the Pita Shack, which does Mediterranean food. At Bombay Canteen, we are doing versions of what we call the Munchies menu of sandwiches from all over the world, which you will travel far and wide for. And it's been really, really interesting that how each one of these little niches now has a following of its own.
Yeah.
So I think through this entire period, it's been one of like I feel delivery is going to continue to be there as a really important peg for us going forward. The onus now on us is how do you think through what people will continue to want, and I think it will continue to change as we come out of this lockdown, and hopefully we don't see too many more lockdowns, but we will have to have our ear to the ground to be able to keep evolving. You can't just rest on your laurels on this one and say that time I created this menu, now it's enough. At home, I feel you are even more finicky about what you want because you're not going to order from the same place the next day. If you think of it, you would go to a same restaurant maybe 2-3 times a week because you had different sets of people to go with. Here you're at home, you want something new. So the question for us as the operators is then what do we do to feed into that behavior?
Yeah, interesting, very interesting. Sami, let's talk about Floyd, right? And I know it's been so devastating. I mean, he's been your partner, mentor and everything. I mean, I remember that moment when I figured it out through Twitter and the Bombay Sweet Shop hamper was still on the dining table. It was that week. Right? And it was absolutely terrible and happened so early during the pandemic. And obviously Floyd has his prints all over Bombay Canteen. When I talk to you, I feel he's still part of you. He's not gone anywhere, which is the beauty of it. But talk to us about just going through that loss personally, culture, people, navigating that, because I mean we had something similar. We lost one of the colleagues at Leo Burnett, and just navigating that personally for yourself, for culture, for people, it's a tough one on the leader.
It's extremely tough, and I think at some level, I think it will take us a long time to get, not at some level, at every level, it's going to take us a long time to sort of get over it. But I think it's heartening to hear what you just said, right? Like his imprint will never go away. And that is so true. I think at the end of the day, I was fortunate enough to work with Floyd for almost over a decade. And I think he was family more than a colleague or a partner. I think that's truly what our relationship was. And I think at the end of the day, everyone at Hunger Inc. sort of felt his loss very, very viscerally. What the onus on us was as leaders at that point was, I think through every crisis, what the last year has taught us, that you need to give people their space to be able to deal with it the way they want to deal with it. And also be able to, I don't think any of us have ever been prepared for a crisis like this. I don't think reading any book, listening to any podcast, doing anything would have ever prepared you. Nothing prepares you. We realized the need to communicate more than needed is actually the need of the hour. This also took us a little more than a little while to realize, actually, because I think the first few months were just spent almost in a trance-like state where you were going through the motion of doing whatever you're doing. I think a year and a few months on, I'm able to speak a lot more coherently about how we are dealing with this versus if you tried to talk to me last June, it wouldn't have made sense, honestly. And I think through that period, we also realized what it really takes is that sense of agility I was talking about earlier, is that as an organization, we've always been about the long term. And that's always great, but now it became about 15 days. Like you need to have a 15-day plan and hopefully be able to execute on that. And then you see what just happened and then you move on to the next thing. I think, and that's going to be our way of life for a little while to come, especially for our industry, which is so affected by everything that happens from a restrictions and bans point of view on the ground. I'm glad that the government agencies are being more communicative about, especially in Bombay, about how and when opening up will happen, which makes it sort of easier to plan. But I think at every level, we've had to rethink what it even means to be running a restaurant company, as I was telling you earlier. And it's a new paradigm for all of us. So I think personally, if you ask me, it's been a devastating loss, which it'll take a long, long time to overcome. I think from a professional point of view, the last year has taught us a lot about ourselves and ourselves as a team, not just as individuals, which has brought us closer together almost in a way, to be able to sort of take on what lies in front of us, hopefully.
No, I agree with you. I mean, my personal experience through the pandemic has been similar. The way people have come together. And I remember we were doing a town hall, and somebody pointed out that never before in a corporate town hall have we heard words like love and family. Because for us, that's what we were, right? We were just fighting it together to go through. I mean, I remember in April, I was doing cash flow analysis that do I have enough money to pay salaries to people? Because we didn't know. We didn't know how deep this bottom was. We had no idea, right? And as leaders, I shuddered. I woke up at night not knowing what the future of 450 people would be, right? And but you're right. I think agility is the answer. We swung very quickly. We launched a workshop and a thinking format called 036, which is a short-term thinking format. So my whole point was that everything in business and brand is about the long term, about the 5-year and the 10-year. And here, if we don't survive the short term, there is no long term.
Exactly.
So we built 036, we ran workshops with clients, and these workshops weren't just communication workshops. They were like pivoting the business, thinking of new ideas. So for example, somebody like Shaadi.com, we built a whole new online platform to get people married, weddings from home.
That's amazing.
So we pivoted some of the businesses, new ideas, and so on and so forth. And that's what made us and our clients and our people see through the 2020. As it happens, that once we came out of it, we realized that we navigated much better than we thought we were. In fact, our 2020 revenues were just 5% short of 2019 revenues. So we managed, and the feeling that gave me was that if we can fight this together, then we can fight everything.
Right. No, and it's so much about that ecosystem, right? Like I think just the way you've been there for your partners, etc. Like we have similar experiences where from investors to landlords to like it truly takes a village. Yeah. That's really the thought. Like especially people say it takes a village to run a restaurant. Like that's what we've always said, but it truly that's been more apparent and then some through the last year or so. Yeah. It's taken everyone sort of being able to roll up their sleeves and saying no job is beneath us, no job let's decide what we want to do and let's get it done. I run something called as Chai with Dheeraj, where I try and meet people who I otherwise don't see in meetings, right? The younger lot, because you were on the floor earlier, right? You would meet everybody, you will catch up with anybody, but now team has made our lives linear, right? You have to set up and whatever. So I run this Chai with Dheeraj because I want to get the feeling on what's going on. And sometimes you see people are working out of a small corridor, right? I mean, they don't have space, and or people are working through not getting lunch time and so on and so forth, right? But you realize how much everybody's giving their bit in these times to make things happen. I mean, we can't, as leader, I can't ever be more thankful for what people have brought to the table during these times. Completely agree.
Yeah. On food, though, I mean, there's some restaurants which put up, slideshows outside the restaurant saying the owner eats here. I've always been curious about what do people who run restaurants eat? I mean, is your one meal from Bombay Canteen, another from Pedro, which is my dream? Or what are your favorites?
I will tell you, last night was dinner from... It was a Thai dinner from same but different. So I think that answers your question. Like I love the food we create. Absolutely love it. I could eat it through the week. So, and I think that's also kind of, it's funny you mentioned that because I think that's kind of also was the other driving force in the last couple of months. We were like, let's just create what we love to eat. So, and hopefully everyone else out there will also love it. And that's proven to be the case on most of the dishes.
Yeah, and which are your favorites amongst the 3 setups that you have? You have to choose amongst your kids. Who would you choose?
That's a tough one. I think on different days there are different ones. But give me if I have that sweet craving, the Patisa bar is brings back all sorts of memories from 5-star and Kit Kat combined because the way it is, and then the pastrami sandwich currently on the Bombay Canteen menu is food coma inducing, but amazingly good. So that's a hard one. Wouldn't be able to pick one if you ask me.
Amazing. Samir, we are coming to a close of this conversation, but I want to ask you, India today is full of young people, right? The last time we were pitching to a company, the CEO had 3 years of experience, right? I mean, that's the country we are, right? Young people going out, making their dreams come true. There's a new business thought, business idea on every dining table, every kitchen, every, PowerPoint. What suggestion, recommendation, advice would you give to people going out, starting on their own?
I think the main thing that has always struck me is don't try to do it alone. I think that whole thought process that I think it's great to obviously have that idea, right? But I think as you realize as you're executing it, it is the power of the team that is going to bring it forward. I am so glad in hindsight that I was able to find both Yash and Chef Floyd to be part of my journey, because I can't imagine like going through the last 8 years and especially the last year without that support.
Yeah.
And you don't know what life is going to throw to you, because I think the one thing, I think everyone jokes about how hard restaurants are to run. I think any entrepreneurial dream is equally hard. Yeah. And having that sounding board, having that support system is so critical to be able to traverse that entire piece. And you can see truly magic happen when the right set of people come together.
Yeah.
And I think that power, you just can't underestimate it. I think I drank the Kool-Aid on this a long time ago. And if there's that one piece is like, don't try to do it alone and don't try doing everything yourself, because it's 80% of the time, you know it as well as me, like more than 80% of the time, it's rubbish work. You're dealing with something administrative, you're putting out fires, etc. It's that 10 to 20% you're hoping inspires you, motivates you, and creates that magic. So you need that support on that journey.
No, I can't agree with you more on that. My partner Raj and I, we run Leo Burnett together, right? And some people laugh, how can there be 2 CEOs to a company? But we have 2 CEOs, and it's awesome because you're right. I mean, at 10:30, 11 o'clock, we are calling each other saying, bro, what's been happening? Right? And just to have that somebody to bank on to say, okay, why don't you man that front? I'm manning this. I mean, you're right. I wouldn't have come out of this year if we didn't have that support of each other. So totally agree with you on that. So that's great, Samir. This is the end of my questioning, and right, I always give my opponent a chance to take a stab at me. So we take a quick break and come back, and your shot to ask me questions.
Amazing.
Yeah, quick break.
Hey everybody, let me tell you a little bit about what happened on the IVM Podcast Network this week. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus was joined by Irfan Pabani, who is an old friend of his. They talk about the rich flavors of Indian food and Parsi food specifically. He was also joined by author and historian William Dalrymple. They discuss literature, history, and the culture of the Indian subcontinent. And let me give you a few quick things to check out. Chuck, aka Deepak Gopal Krishnan of Simplified and the Origin of Things fame, has Rohan Joshi, formerly of AIB, on his show. Also on this round is on me. Gautam Purohit of Thakur's Bhojnalaya was on. On the note, Maruk Inayat talks about the cabinet reshuffle. And do check out Global Victoria Tech Talks. We talk about the booming gaming and edutech industries in Australia. Do follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram to keep up what's going on the network. And I'd like to finally thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, CEAT, and Global Victoria. Thank you so much for making this possible.
So, Dheeraj, I think it's my turn to ask you a few questions. So, here goes. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how good a cook do you think you are?
Tough one. I would say pre-pandemic 3 on 10, post-pandemic 6 on 10. So I've been doing a fair bit of cooking during the pandemic.
And this is your assessment or everyone else at home?
I think they would agree. They would agree because now there's a demand that you haven't cooked for a while. So I take it that it's more than just convenience. Yeah.
Awesome. And what do you enjoy cooking?
So lots of stuff. In fact, last week I made the dum pukht biryani. Wow. I also enjoy cooking pastas. So a mix of stuff, Chinese, right? I was craving dim sums during the earlier lockdowns and actually did create dim sums.
Wow, that's awesome.
So yeah.
So cooking all this, were there any funny moments that have happened in the kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, it's always happened, right? So I I don't plan the ingredients, right? So sometimes it happens that I go in trying to make Chinese and actually come out with an Indian dish. So yes, that has happened because of the experiments which happened on the kitchen floor.
The mirch ka swad, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite junk food?
I would say my favorite junk food are sweets, yeah. Sweets, right? I mean, I'm a regular at your, Bombay shop delivery. But anything which is sweet, I mean, that's my nemesis.
That's your weakness.
That's my weakness.
Do you cook desserts as well, or you leave that to ordering?
No, can't do desserts. Yeah, tough one. Yeah.
But I leave next project. Next project.
Yeah.
And for the all-important question, what's your favorite restaurant?
It has to be O Pedro. It has to be O Pedro. I mean, you know that. I mean,
well played.
You've seen me enough there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As always, amazing talking to you. And I think we're talking at a week where we just reopened for lunch, at least in Bombay.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're seeing brighter days, so to speak, come our way again.
It will. I'm convinced, Samir, that this will come back because and the more we are studying this, realizing that once things open up even a bit, people do want to get back the positivity, the normalcy of life, and they want to capture back. So it will come back, and everybody is also kind of pivoting to the hybrid model. So I don't think we can go wrong with that.
Yeah, hopefully, I think as we were talking earlier, the fundamentals will remain the same, but I think the way of conducting ourselves are going to change. So I think it's going to be an exciting time over the next 2-3 years to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Thank you, Samir, so much. Thank you for being on the show. Great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, as usual, always, enjoyed this.
Yeah, exactly.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
Well, one of the first things that I learned from Samir is that running a restaurant is such a tough business. It's not all glam as I thought. And I'm probably better off continuing running an advertising agency. So there goes my Goa retirement plan, but that's for another day. On a serious note, what Samir and team are doing is a whole new learning on brand extensions. The way Samir and team are looking at, say, the Bombay Canteen or the O Pedro is as brands that deliver a certain food experience. Now, when you define a restaurant like that, it means that this experience can take any format. You have liberated the idea of the restaurant from it being another real estate. You cannot deliver this in a home delivery format, or it can be a collaboration with an indigenous gin brand to make a guava gin as Bombay Canteen did last summer. Or it can be an online bakery such as Brun and Babka that O Pedro runs in today's times. The extension of a restaurant need not be another restaurant, and that's the point. It has to be an extension of the experience that the restaurant is designed to deliver, and therefore it can take any format of a home delivery, of a bakery, and so on and so forth. The other learning is how a restaurant business which is designed to delight its guests within the four walls has had to transition itself to own the consumer through digital. As Samir put it, learning the whole language around D2C, APIs, has been a new game for somebody who mastered the art of kitchen in a restaurant. But the real deal is going beyond merely transferring what you were making at the restaurant to home delivery. It's about solving for the needs of a stay-at-home audience. And in this case, they now have a changing menu format at Bombay Canteen, such as the Kung Fu Canteen, the Bombay Canteen's take on Chinese cuisine. Because they realize that within the confines of work from home, everything is being so similar that people want change. And food today is the biggest source of this change. Food today actually is the new entertainment in work from home. The biggest learning for me, however, are those around leadership that this pandemic has taught all of us. Samir spoke about how they cope with the loss of Chef Floyd, how transparency and almost over-communicating became super important. And finally, his advice that entrepreneurship is best navigated as a partnership. It's hard enough navigating the everyday. You need someone you can share it with. Those were my learnings from this conversation. What were yours? thoughts did this conversation trigger in your mind? Do tag me on my Twitter handle Dheeraj_Sinha or leave your comments at speakeasywithdheerajsinha.com. If you like this podcast, you can explore other amazing podcasts on the IVM Podcast app and website. You can follow them on social media at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for listening.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Arshit. खाने का इतिहास, इकोनॉमिक्स, पॉलिसी, साइकोलॉजी सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Nankali podcast every Wednesday, सिर्फ IVM Podcast ऐप या वेबसाइट पर या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.
Feeling overwhelmed, anxious, struggling with too many obstacles, don't know where your life is headed? Well, if you are dealing with one or all of these, tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast, because in each episode, I share a life lesson, a life hack, a pro tip that can help you get your life back on track. All episodes are available on the IBM website, IBM Podcast app, or wherever it is that you get your podcast from.